Welcome to Artificial Fluency English Stories, the podcast designed to elevate your intermediate English skills through compelling narratives and sophisticated discourse. I'm your host, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, and today we're exploring 4 transformative stories that showcase the pivotal moments when ordinary circumstances evolve into extraordinary opportunities for personal and professional growth. This episode, Turning Points and New Horizons, examines how individuals navigate unexpected challenges that ultimately reshape their understanding of themselves and their place in the world. Each narrative has been carefully constructed to challenge B1 and B2 level learners with complex vocabulary, nuanced grammar structures, and thought-provoking themes that mirror real-world experiences in English-speaking environments. Today's stories will expose you to advanced conditional constructions, sophisticated passive voice applications, and the kind of analytical language essential for academic and professional success. You'll encounter terminology from fields including technology, environmental science, international relations, and creative industries, preparing you for diverse conversational contexts. We'll meet Oliver, a software engineer whose automated solution to a community problem sparks an ethical debate about technology's role in society. We'll follow Dr. Sarah Kim, a marine biologist whose research expedition in the Arctic reveals both scientific breakthroughs and personal revelations about climate change. We'll observe Elena Volkov, a refugee-turned-social entrepreneur whose innovative approach to integration challenges conventional immigration policies. Finally, we'll join Marcus Chen, a freelance photographer whose accidental discovery leads to a career-defining documentary project. Each story incorporates multiple narrative threads, requiring you to synthesize information, understand implicit meanings, and appreciate the cultural contexts that influence character motivations and societal responses. These comprehension skills prove crucial for participating confidently in academic discussions, professional presentations, and cross-cultural communications. Oliver Patterson had always believed that technology could solve society's most pressing problems, but his latest programming project was generating controversy he hadn't anticipated. What began as a straightforward attempt to optimize public transportation routes in his mid-sized city had evolved into a complex ethical debate about algorithmic decision-making and its potential impact on social equity. The project originated from Oliver's daily frustration with the inefficient bus system that served his diverse neighborhood. As a senior software developer with expertise in machine learning algorithms, he recognized that data analysis could identify patterns in ridership that might enable more responsive route planning. Working evenings and weekends, he developed a sophisticated program that analyzed passenger data, traffic patterns, and demographic information to suggest optimal bus routes and schedules. Oliver's algorithm produced remarkable results. By redistributing routes based on actual usage patterns rather than historical assumptions, the system could reduce average commute times by 37% while decreasing operational costs by 22%. The City Transportation Department expressed enthusiasm about implementing his recommendations, particularly given their budget constraints and growing pressure to improve public services. However, when Oliver presented his findings to the City Council, unexpected opposition emerged from community advocacy groups representing low-income neighborhoods. They argued that optimizing routes based purely on ridership data would inevitably disadvantage areas where residents couldn't afford private transportation alternatives, creating a cycle where reduced bus service would further isolate already marginalized communities. The criticism forced Oliver to examine assumptions he hadn't consciously recognized in his programming approach. His algorithm prioritized efficiency and cost-effectiveness, treating all passengers as equivalent data points rather than considering the social and economic contexts that influence their transportation needs. Communities with lower ridership numbers weren't necessarily less deserving of service. They might simply face barriers that traditional data analysis couldn't capture. Dr. Maria Santos, a sociology professor who specialized in urban planning, explained the complexity during a public hearing. While Mr. Patterson's technical solution is impressive, she noted, transportation systems serve social justice functions beyond mere efficiency. Public transit often provides lifelines for elderly residents, people with disabilities, and families without reliable income who depend on predictable service regardless of ridership volume. Oliver found himself grappling with questions that extended far beyond programming challenges. Should algorithms designed to optimize systems account for social equity considerations, even if doing so reduced overall efficiency? Who should determine the balance between economic sustainability and social responsibility in public services? How could technological solutions incorporate human values that couldn't be easily quantified? The controversy intensified when local media coverage attracted attention from technology ethics researchers nationwide. Some experts praised Oliver's technical innovation while questioning the broader implications of allowing algorithmic efficiency to drive public policy decisions. Others argued that his approach represented exactly the kind of data-driven optimization that modern governments needed to serve constituents effectively within budget constraints. Rather than abandoning his project or defending it unchanged, Oliver chose to collaborate with community representatives and social scientists to develop a more comprehensive approach. This revised algorithm incorporated weighted factors that prioritized service to underserved areas, even when pure efficiency metrics might suggest route modifications. The collaborative process proved more complex and time-consuming than Oliver's original solo programming effort. Community meetings, stakeholder interviews, and iterative testing required skills he hadn't developed in his technical training. However, the final system achieved both operational improvements and social equity goals that neither purely technical nor purely activist approaches could have accomplished independently. Oliver's experience transformed his understanding of the relationship between technological capability and social responsibility. He realized that effective programming in public service contexts required not only technical expertise, but also cultural competency, ethical reasoning, and collaborative problem-solving skills. The successful implementation of his modified algorithm led to consulting opportunities with other cities facing similar transportation challenges. Oliver established a practice that specialized in developing socially conscious algorithmic solutions, demonstrating that technical innovation and social justice considerations could complement rather than conflict with each other. Key vocabulary and expressions. Pressing problems, urgent, important issues that need immediate attention. Optimize, make as effective or functional as possible. Sophisticated program, complex, advanced software. Ridership data, information about people who use public transportation. Budget constraints, limitations caused by lack of money. Advocacy groups, organizations that support particular causes or communities. Marginalized communities, groups that are pushed to the edges of society. Equivalent data points, pieces of information treated as having equal value. Grappling with, struggling to understand or deal with. Quantified, measured or expressed in numbers. Stakeholder interviews, conversations with people affected by decisions. Cultural competency, ability to work effectively with people from different backgrounds. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent 15 years studying marine ecosystems, but nothing in her academic preparation had equipped her for the emotional impact of witnessing climate change firsthand during her research expedition to the rapidly changing Arctic Ocean. What was intended as a routine data collection mission evolved into a profound personal reckoning with the urgency of environmental destruction and her responsibility as both a scientist and global citizen. The expedition, jointly funded by 3 international universities, aimed to document changes in Arctic marine biodiversity over the past decade. Sarah's specific research focused on how warming ocean temperatures affected the distribution and behavior of microscopic organisms that formed the foundation of Arctic food chains. Her previous work had been largely laboratory-based, analyzing samples and data collected by other researchers. However, experiencing the Arctic environment directly proved transformative in ways that data analysis couldn't convey. The research vessel navigated through waters that historical records indicated should have been covered by thick sea ice. Instead, Sarah found herself collecting samples from open ocean areas where polar bears were struggling to find stable hunting platforms, and where traditional Inuit hunting practices had become impossible due to unpredictable ice conditions. The scientific data confirmed projections that Sarah had read in academic literature. Ocean acidity levels had increased significantly, water temperatures had risen beyond historical norms, and species populations were shifting northward at unprecedented rates. However, witnessing these changes in real time, surrounded by the vast landscapes that were disappearing, created an emotional connection to her research that transformed her understanding of climate science from abstract knowledge to urgent personal mission. Sarah's conversations with Indigenous community members proved particularly enlightening. Elders shared observations about environmental changes that their families had noticed over multiple generations, providing context and nuance that complemented her quantitative measurements. Their traditional ecological knowledge revealed patterns and relationships that Western scientific methods had overlooked, challenging Sarah's assumptions about the superiority of laboratory-based research approaches. One elderly Inuit hunter, Thomas Konguk, described how his grandfather's hunting strategies no longer worked because ice formation patterns had become completely unpredictable. "The ice speaks differently now," he explained through a translator. "It doesn't follow the old songs that taught us when and where it would be safe." His metaphorical language captured aspects of environmental change that Sarah's instruments could measure but couldn't fully express. The expedition's findings exceeded Sarah's expectations in terms of documenting environmental degradation, but they also revealed unexpected resilience and adaptation among some species. Certain marine organisms were developing tolerance for increased acidity levels, while others were establishing new behavioral patterns that enabled survival in altered conditions. These discoveries suggested that climate change impacts, while severe, might be more complex and varied than simplified models indicated. Sarah's most significant personal revelation came during a storm that stranded the research team in a small Arctic community for several days. Forced to suspend data collection, she spent time learning about how community members were adapting to environmental changes through modified hunting practices, alternative food sources, and innovative technologies that combined traditional knowledge with contemporary solutions. These conversations challenged Sarah's academic perspective that positioned scientists as objective observers of environmental change, rather than participants in communities affected by that change. She began questioning whether traditional research approaches that emphasized detached analysis were adequate for addressing problems that required immediate action and community-based solutions. Upon returning to her university, Sarah faced the challenge of translating her Arctic experience into academic publications and policy recommendations that could influence climate change responses. However, she discovered that scientific writing conventions made it difficult to convey the emotional urgency and cultural complexity she had witnessed, leading her to explore alternative communication strategies. Sarah began collaborating with documentary filmmakers, policy advocates, and Indigenous rights organizations to develop multimedia presentations that combined rigorous scientific data with personal narratives and cultural perspectives. This approach enabled her to reach audiences beyond academic circles and to advocate for climate policies that incorporated both scientific evidence and community wisdom. Her Arctic experience fundamentally altered Sarah's career trajectory, leading her to establish a research program that prioritized community-based participatory approaches to environmental science. She realized that effective climate change research required not only technical expertise, but also cultural humility, collaborative skills, and commitment to translating knowledge into actionable solutions. We headed her, prepared her to handle personal reckoning, deep thinking about one's responsibilities, biodiversity, variety of plant and animal life in an environment, food chains, connections showing what animals eat what, unprecedented rates, speeds never seen before, real time, happening now as you watch, indigenous community members, original people of a particular place, traditional ecological knowledge, understanding of nature passed down through generations, quantitative measurements, information expressed in numbers, environmental degradation, damage to the natural world, community-based participatory approaches, research methods that include local people as partners, cultural humility, respectful attitude toward other cultures' knowledge. Elena Volkov had arrived in Montreal as a refugee 3 years earlier, with advanced degrees in urban planning but no Canadian work experience, limited French language skills, and a profound determination to rebuild her professional life while contributing to her adopted community. Her journey from unemployment to successful social entrepreneur illustrates both the challenges facing skilled immigrants and the innovative solutions that emerge when traditional integration approaches prove inadequate. Elena's initial months in Canada followed a frustratingly familiar pattern for many professional immigrants. Despite her master's degree in urban planning from a prestigious university in Ukraine and 8 years of experience designing sustainable housing projects, Canadian employers consistently rejected her applications. The standard response cited her lack of Canadian experience, creating a circular problem where she couldn't gain experience without employment opportunities. Conventional integration services offered language classes and resume workshops, but they didn't address the fundamental disconnect between Elena's expertise and employers' willingness to recognize international qualifications. She found herself overqualified for entry-level positions, yet unable to access professional roles that matched her capabilities and experience. The turning point came when Elena volunteered with a neighborhood association addressing housing affordability issues in her diverse Montreal community. Her urban planning background enabled her to identify, design, and policy solutions that other volunteers, despite their good intentions, lacked the technical knowledge to develop. However, her suggestions were initially dismissed because community members questioned whether someone new to Canada could understand local housing challenges. Rather than becoming discouraged, Elena decided to demonstrate her value through concrete action. She conducted detailed analysis of vacant lots and underutilized buildings in the neighborhood, developing preliminary designs for affordable housing that incorporated both Canadian building codes and innovative approaches she had successfully implemented in Ukraine. Her unofficial research revealed that the community's housing problems weren't unique to their neighborhood, but reflected broader systemic issues affecting Montreal's immigrant-heavy districts. Traditional affordable housing approaches had failed to address the specific needs of newcomer families, who often required flexible spaces that could accommodate extended family members, cultural practices, and small business activities. Elena's breakthrough innovation involved designing adaptive housing that could be easily modified to serve different family configurations and economic activities. Her designs incorporated features like convertible common areas that could function as childcare spaces during the day and community meeting rooms in the evening, and flexible commercial spaces that could accommodate diverse small businesses serving ethnic communities. When Elena presented her adaptive housing proposal to the neighborhood association, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Community members recognized that her designs addressed practical challenges they had experienced but hadn't known how to articulate to housing developers or city planners. The success of her community presentation led to invitations to speak at other neighborhood meetings and eventually to a consulting contract with a progressive housing development company that specialized in innovative affordable housing solutions. The company's executives recognized that Elena's international perspective and immigrant experience provided insights that Canadian-trained planners, however well-intentioned, couldn't offer. Elena's consulting work expanded as word spread about her culturally responsive approach to urban planning. She began working with municipal governments to review zoning policies that inadvertently created barriers for immigrant entrepreneurs, and with developers interested in creating housing that served diverse communities more effectively. However, Elena's most significant contribution emerged when she established a nonprofit organization that connected skilled immigrants with community organizations facing technical challenges. Her expertise exchange program enabled newcomers to contribute their professional skills while gaining Canadian experience and building networks that often led to employment opportunities. The program's success attracted attention from federal immigration officials who were seeking more effective integration approaches. Elena's model demonstrated that skilled immigrants could contribute to community development immediately upon arrival, rather than spending years in retraining programs that often underutilized their existing expertise. Within 2 years, Elena's organization had expanded to serve 5 Canadian cities, connecting hundreds of skilled immigrants with community projects that benefited from their international experience and technical knowledge. Her approach challenged conventional assumptions about integration that positioned newcomers as recipients of services rather than contributors to community solutions. Elena's work earned recognition from urban planning associations and immigration policy researchers who viewed her adaptive housing designs and expertise exchange programs as innovative models for other multicultural cities. Her success demonstrated that effective integration required not only helping immigrants adapt to Canadian systems, but also adapting Canadian approaches to benefit from immigrants' skills and perspectives. Key vocabulary and expressions: adopted community, place where an immigrant chooses to live permanently. Integration approaches, methods to help newcomers become part of society. Circular problem, situation where you can't solve one part without solving another. Disconnect, lack of connection or understanding between two things. Overqualified, having more skills than a job requires. Preliminary designs, early basic plans for buildings. Underutilized buildings, structures not being used to their full potential. Systemic issues, problems built into the way systems work. Adaptive housing, buildings that can be changed for different uses. Articulate, express ideas clearly in words. Inadvertently, accidentally, without meaning to. Culturally responsive, designed to work well with different cultures. Expertise exchange, program where people share their professional skills. Marcus Chen had been working as a freelance photographer for 5 years, primarily capturing corporate events and portrait sessions to pay his bills while pursuing his passion for street photography during weekends. However, a chance encounter during a routine assignment would transform him from a struggling commercial photographer into an internationally recognized documentary artist whose work would influence public discourse about urban development and community displacement. The assignment seemed unremarkable, documenting the before conditions of a historic neighborhood scheduled for redevelopment into luxury condominiums. The real estate company that hired Marcus wanted professional photographs that would help them market the transformation project to potential investors and city planning committees. As Marcus walked through the area with his camera, he initially focused on architectural details and streetscapes that demonstrated the neighborhood's need for renovation. Many buildings showed signs of deferred maintenance, and some vacant lots had become informal gathering spaces for homeless individuals. From a purely aesthetic perspective, the area appeared to justify the redevelopment company's claims about urban renewal and neighborhood improvement. However, as Marcus spent more time in the community, he began noticing details that complicated the simple narrative of decline and renewal. Behind the deteriorating facades, he discovered vibrant community networks that had developed creative solutions to urban challenges. Residents had transformed vacant lots into community gardens, organized informal childcare cooperatives, and established mutual aid networks that supported vulnerable neighbors. His accidental discovery came when he attempted to photograph a seemingly abandoned building that was actually housing a thriving community resource center. The building's exterior appeared run down, but inside, Marcus found computer classes for elderly residents, after-school programs for children, and meeting spaces where community members organized responses to local issues. The center's coordinator, Maria Gonzalez, explained that the building's deliberately modest exterior was a strategy to avoid attracting attention from developers and city officials who might terminate their lease or raise rents to unaffordable levels. "We learned that looking successful makes you a target for displacement," she explained with ironic humor. Marcus realized that his original assignment was capturing only one dimension of a much more complex story. The redevelopment project would indeed improve the neighborhood's physical appearance and property values, but it would also destroy social infrastructure that had taken decades to develop and that served residents who couldn't afford to relocate to comparable communities. Torn between his professional obligations and his growing understanding of the situation's complexity, Marcus decided to expand his documentation project. With Maria's permission, he began photographing the community programs and informal networks that would be lost during redevelopment, creating a visual record of social assets that weren't visible in traditional neighborhood assessments. His photographs revealed the gap between official narratives about urban improvement and the lived experiences of residents who had created meaningful communities despite challenging physical conditions. The images captured moments of connection, creativity, and resilience that challenged viewers to reconsider assumptions about which neighborhoods deserved preservation and which required transformation. When Marcus submitted his work to the real estate company, they rejected the photographs that depicted active community life, requesting only images that supported their redevelopment narrative. However, Marcus had developed relationships with community members who encouraged him to share the complete story through alternative channels. His decision to exhibit the full photographic series at a local gallery attracted attention from urban planning researchers, community activists, and arts critics who recognized the work's significance for debates about gentrification and community development. The exhibition led to speaking opportunities and additional photography assignments that focused on documenting communities facing similar pressures. Marcus's accidental transformation into a documentary photographer taught him that meaningful artistic work often emerges from engaging seriously with social issues rather than pursuing purely aesthetic goals. His experience demonstrated how creative practitioners could contribute to public conversations about urban development by making visible the human costs of policy decisions that were often discussed in abstract economic terms. Key vocabulary and expressions: chance encounter, unexpected meeting or discovery; routine assignment, normal, regular work project; deferred maintenance, repairs that have been delayed too long; urban renewal, process of improving old city areas; deteriorating facades, fronts of buildings that are getting worse; mutual aid networks, groups where people help each other; vulnerable neighbors, people who need extra support; social infrastructure, community connections and support systems; lived experiences, what life is actually like for real people; gentrification, process where poor neighborhoods become expensive; abstract economic terms, financial concepts that don't show human impact; creative practitioners, people who work in arts or creative fields. Today's narratives have illuminated the profound ways that individuals can transform challenging circumstances into opportunities for innovation, advocacy, and artistic expression. Through Oliver's algorithmic ethics journey, Sarah's Arctic awakening, Elena's integration innovations, and Marcus's documentary evolution, we've explored how personal growth often emerges from confronting the complexities and contradictions inherent in contemporary social challenges. These stories demonstrate several critical aspects of B1, B2 level English proficiency. Each narrative employed sophisticated vocabulary that enables precise expression of abstract concepts, complex grammatical structures that accommodate multiple perspectives and conditional scenarios, and cultural awareness that facilitates meaningful participation in contemporary social discourse. The linguistic sophistication evident throughout these stories reflects the kind of advanced communication skills necessary for academic success, professional advancement, and civic engagement in English-speaking societies. Notice how each character's development paralleled their increasing ability to articulate complex ideas, negotiate cultural differences, and collaborate across professional and community boundaries. For continued intermediate-level development, focus on analyzing how advanced English facilitates nuanced discussions of social issues. Practice expressing personal opinions about complex topics using sophisticated vocabulary, and develop sensitivity to the cultural contexts that inform professional and academic communication in English-speaking environments. These narratives remind us that language mastery extends beyond grammatical accuracy to encompass cultural competence, critical thinking, and the ability to engage constructively with diverse perspectives and challenging social realities. Thank you for joining Artificial Fluency English Stories. Continue expanding your linguistic horizons through engagement with complex, meaningful content that challenges your comprehension while expanding your capacity for sophisticated English communication.